Hi, peeps. You're listening to She's My Cherry Pie, the baking podcast from the Cherry Bombe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jessie Sheehan. I'm a baker, recipe developer, and author of 4 baking books, including Snackable Bakes. Each Saturday, I hang out with the sweetest bakers around and take a deep dive into their signature bakes. My guest today is Christina Wood. Christina is a pastry chef and the owner of Temple Pastries in Seattle. She's also the author of Pastry Temple, Baking with Inspired Flavors, her debut cookbook devoted to croissant, brioche, puff pastry, and so much more. Christina started her bakery business as a pop-up and opened her brick-and-mortar in 2020. Since then, she's had a steady line out the door and become known for her delicious baked goods, especially her croissant. Earlier this year, Christina was a James Beard semi-finalist for Outstanding Pastry Chef or Baker. Christina joins me to talk about her baking journey, which didn't begin until her 20s, and her love of laminated dough. She tells me about the genius way she makes a butter block and how her dishwasher plays a role in proofing her croissant dough. Then Christina walks me through her triple chocolate croissant recipe from Pastry Temple. I loved learning about why she's never been a traditional pain au chocolat person. Because, as Christina says, she loves chocolate too much to settle for just a little slab in the center of a croissant. Her version is for serious chocolate lovers with chocolate in the dough itself, mini chocolate chips throughout the pastry, and a whipped chocolate ganache piped in after baking. Christina also explains the multi-day process behind the croissant, from making the biga and butter block to laminating, proofing, baking, and filling them. She also is meticulous about telling us how long each step of the recipe will take the home baker. So there are no surprises. I so appreciate that. You are going to love hearing from Christina, so stay tuned for our chat. You can find today's recipe at cherrybombe.substack.com. If you love our show, did you know that we publish a free baking newsletter every Saturday to correspond with each new episode? Check out Cherry Bombe Substack to subscribe to our She's My Cherry Pie newsletter today, where you'll get exclusive insights about my guests on the show, their recipes, and other fun baking news and tips. Plus, check out our other free newsletters, where you'll find the latest food and fashion news and browse through our recipe catalog, which is filled with some really great recipes. While you're there, consider becoming a paid Substack subscriber to get access to exclusive content from Cherry Bombe Magazine, invites to our monthly Bombe Squad meetings with industry pros, and discounts to events like our annual Jubilee Conference. A subscription is just $6 per month or $55 a year. Learn more at cherrybombe.substack.com or click the link in our show notes. Let's chat with today's guest. Christina, so excited to have you on She's My Cherry Pie and to chat triple chocolate croissant with you and so much more.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I usually start interviews with sort of early childhood baking memories, but I think your baking or even maybe tasting baked goods actually didn't happen until you left the house. Can you tell us a little bit about why sort of all of that happened to you so late in life?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very religious family, and earthly pleasures, so to speak, were kind of seen as something we should not get involved in because our true reward of heaven was waiting for us if we lived a pure and chaste life here on earth. So, sweets were never big for us. I did do normal childhood things like go trick-or-treating and all that, but I portioned my candy to last me for the whole year because I knew I wasn't getting a lot of that throughout. So I don't have a lot of baking memories at all.
I read that your baking sort of became your religion, as it were.
Yes, exactly. So when I left my house to go to college, it was my first exposure into public education, and I met so many amazing people, and I just realized, hey, there's this whole world out there that I had no idea even existed. And so I was just, experiencing all sorts of new ideas. I just jumped headfirst into it. I was so excited. And then baking, I was kind of just doing it as a hobby while I was getting my degree in accounting. And then I realized, accounting is not fun.
Yeah.
It is super boring. And I like to be creative. And usually creative accountants go to jail. So I decided to abandon that path after I graduated with my degree and just jumped headfirst into baking.
I love that. There were two actually little food moments that I kind of discovered while reading the headnotes in the book that I did want to ask you about from childhood. I actually now cannot exactly remember which recipe it is in the book, but you talk about loving tiny hors d'oeuvres when you were a little kid. And I wanted to know, where would mom and dad have permitted you to have tiny hors d'oeuvres? Like, what should I picture? Like a dinner party or that your parents had?
It was always, we were always going over to other church members' houses for barbecues or Super Bowl parties or, like little dinner get-togethers. And I would always remember, I guess it was mostly on New Year's Eve, where the spread of sweets would be just laid out on a table. And I would be like, ooh, I'm getting like these little things. And it was just so exciting to me. It felt grown up and so like cosmopolitan.
Totally. Well, also I personally lean a little on the jumbo side when it comes to sweets, but there is something really special about tiny things as well. I feel like either really big, if you're me, and then also like really tiny little things, like especially as a little kid, it's like, oh my God, it's a quiche, but it's as big as my fingernail. I know that it was, I think, a best friend in college or post-college who sort of first kind of inspired you to start cooking and that led to baking. Can you tell us about that best friend and the beginning of your like experimentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Her name's Nova Robinson. I hope she's listening. She and I got paired together as random roommates in the dorms our sophomore year. And I am so grateful to have met her. She's so inspiring. She like really helped expose me to a lot of those ideas that I was really excited to learn about. She just marches to the beat of her own drum. Like she has never felt pressure from her family or anyone else to do what is expected of her. And so she lives authentically her own life. And when she started getting into cooking, I was like, yeah, let me just try that with you. She was doing all sorts of crazy things and just ad-libbing. And it was like too chaotic for me. I was like, I need rules. I need structure.
I'm an accountant.
Yes. So that's why I kind of started baking, is because like I still wanted to be in that realm, but the savory cooking was just way too chaotic. So yeah, baking really spoke to me with the rules and the regulations and must follow the recipe exactly. And then maybe you can make some changes later.
I'm a former lawyer and I feel exactly the same way about baking. It totally feeds that part of, it feeds many different things, but it feeds that part of me that likes structure and rules and following what you're told to do or what you want other people to do. And I also read that you were a vegetarian at first.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was another act of rebellion I was making. It was very popular in the early aughts to become a vegetarian, and I was another victim of that. But I think that's why I wanted to learn how to cook, is because, when you eat meat, you can kind of just get by on whatever. But when you're vegetarian, and you need to be a little more intentional. And so that was why I kind of started cooking with my friend, even though she ate all sorts of meats, the strangest meats. So it was kind of a funny dichotomy between us there. But yeah, learning those basic skills in the savory side was more out of necessity to feed myself.
Do you remember an actual early baking memory from that period of time? I know there was like a vegan brownie fiasco. I don't know if that was like the first one or just one of many experimentations in the beginning, but can you share an early baked?
Yeah, I was trying to do a lot of vegan baked goods. I don't really know why, because I was never vegan. And I did try to attempt brownies, and I used silken tofu and avocados, and was really focused on trying to get that fat right and the texture, the gooey texture. But in doing so, I forgot about structure. And so to bake them long enough to be able to not just be soup, they turned into this brick, like a solid burnt brick. And I was like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Right. What about an early baked good eating memory, like maybe at a bakery near college or somebody else made something that sort of blew your mind, like, what? It's not Halloween candy?
Yeah. There was a bakery in town that I did not work at. It was called Upper Crust, and I think it's still there. But they made all sorts of laminated, traditionally French croissants, danishes, scones, cannelés, just so French. I remember going and just being like, I have never tasted something so light, so buttery, so flaky. It was like just the right amount of sweet. It was just so satisfying. And like looking back on it, it probably wasn't that good in the grand scheme of things. But like as the first introduction to French pastry, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so good.
The new issue of Cherry Bombe magazine is here. The theme is Game Changers, and we have 5 different covers featuring 7 superstars who have changed the game in a major way. The issue celebrates the visionaries, innovators, and changemakers who are reshaping the worlds of food, drink, and hospitality. To get your copy today or check out our list of retailers, visit cherrybombe.com or the link in our show notes. College was in Florida, and you ended up working at a bakery, near your school, I think, after you graduated. Tell us about that. Was that just a moment where you were like, I need to learn more, I want to be surrounded by this, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I had graduated. I'd worked a few odd jobs, and then I was working in a burrito kitchen. And I was like, I really just want to be baking. I don't want to be cooking, so I should really just apply to a bakery. And there was one I could ride my bike to. They specialized in sourdough breads. I was like, I have no experience, so why would they hire me? So I baked a loaf of challah at my house. I rode my bike over there with it, and I just dropped it off with a resume that had nothing on it. And I was like, please hire me. I really, really want to work here. And that worked. I guess my challah was good enough for them. But it was a very low tech kind of place. We had no mixers. We mixed all the bread by hand in bus tubs, like tartine style. And we had like just really bad like pizza ovens to bake it in. And we did have a sheeter, so I learned the basic process of lamination there. But yeah, it was just like a cute little neighborhood spot. They also did pasta. So I learned a little bit about like rolling tortellini and stuff like that. But really, I think what was the best thing for me there is they gave me free reign to just make a weekly dessert special. So I kind of just got to play around even though I did not know anything. And they were very gracious to let me do that. But I loved that. I loved getting to flex my creative skills, even though I didn't have a lot of like good foundational baking skills yet.
Then I think soon after that, you ended up moving to Seattle, sight unseen, ended up getting a job in a well-known bakery with a established, fantastic pastry chef. How did you get that job? Was it like the challah drop-off situation again, or?
I think that was all luck. I have no idea why he hired me. Yeah, I jumped in a friend's car who was moving to Portland, and I was like, take me with you. I had a suitcase with me, and that was about it. And I just showed up in Seattle. I looked up, like, what are the best bakeries in town? I only applied to those places, and one of them hired me. I don't know why, but it was like a miracle.
Incredible. Well, you ended up opening up your bakery, Temple Pastries. You originally launched Temple as a pop-up kind of wholesale operation in like 2018. And back then it was primarily croissant, or was it as varied a menu as you have now?
It was just strictly croissants. I think we maybe made one cookie.
Yeah. How'd you land on croissant? I know you were sort of really leaning into alternative flours, but how'd you land on croissant?
I was kind of thinking, I was very nervous to start a pop-up. I was kind of living paycheck to paycheck. It was a big risk because I had to buy a sheeter and rent a kitchen space and all this. And I was like, how am I going to get people to come to my pop-ups and buy stuff from me if I don't stand out in some very big way? And at the time, there were not a lot of croissant bakeries in Seattle. This was right around the time that Supermoon was coming out, and that was a big inspiration for me. It was like, wow, they're doing multicolored croissants. They're filled with all this cool stuff. I could do that. I have the skills I need to do that. It's just, am I going to be brave enough to try to do it on my own? So that was how I landed on croissants, is I just really wanted to stick with something that would be something that no one could just copy. They would have to like have a skill set lying underneath that they had worked many years on getting in order to catch up to me.
Yep. Makes sense. And then you ended up opening the storefront in October of 2020, beginning with like a focus on sourdough croissant, laminated pastries. But I think either today or even back then, people loved you guys for your croissants.
Yes.
Yes. And your flavored croissant, your brioche. Can you tell us a little bit about the bakery today for those of us that haven't been, and tell us about your croissants?
Yes. So the bakery now is, I can't believe how big it is. We have 25 employees. It's in the Central District of Seattle, which is kind of just south of Capitol Hill. We're a neighborhood bakery. We really rely on our regulars to come through. And then on the weekends, we have a line out the door from people traveling from other parts of Seattle, other parts of the country to come see us. Our menu is not just croissants, which we have, I think, 12 or 14 different varieties of croissants every day. But we also do donuts, sourdough breads, entremet, like mousse, fancy mousse desserts, macarons, sandwiches, ice cream during the summer. Like, we really try to do it all.
One thing that really struck me about the bakery's packaging, which I just sort of saw online, and then this is a great segue into the book, is the aesthetics are so awesome and cool. And just like, obviously design is important to you, and then it's reflected in the book too. Are you the genius behind all of that? Are you working with the design team? Where does all your cool packaging? Did that just come out of your creative brain?
My hospitality director is sitting right here. She's the one who designed it.
Oh, that's so great.
I do care a lot about design and aesthetic. The space itself is designed beautifully, and I worked with a designer there, but we kind of collaborated on like, what do you want the feel to be? And I really wanted it to be not boring minimalism, which is like so much of Seattle coffee shops. I wanted more earth tones. I wanted so many plants. I wanted it to feel like an extension of nature, how temples should feel. And then, yeah, the packaging, all the design, I hired my hospitality director, Rosie, because she has a design background, and we collaborate on so many things. Like right now, she just finished, we're doing our very first advent calendar filled with bonbons this year. So she designed that. We do a cookie tin every year that's designed and etched and filled with 12 different kinds of cookies, because we're really extra over here.
Tell us a little bit about the cookbook. It's about perfecting these 3 pillars of pastry, brioche and croissant and puff pastry. Tell us about the book. Was that sort of always a dream? Were you approached? Tell us about how the book came to be.
Yeah, I had never really thought about writing a cookbook, but I got an email from the publisher being like, hey, someone who works for us met you at a party like 2 years ago, and she thinks you're going to change the world. We'd like to talk to you about writing a cookbook. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? So I met with the publisher and we discussed a few ideas. And in the creative process, you come up with lots of bad ideas first. And finally, it landed on me that I want to do a book to my former self. What I wish I had when I was trying to teach myself how to bake in my home kitchen before I ever had a job in a bakery, or even during my first bakery job, really, to like kind of learn these more advanced doughs, because there just wasn't anything out there to learn from.
Let's jump into the Triple Chocolate Croissant. I love that you tell us right in the head note that you are not a pain au chocolat person. Tell us why.
Basically, there's not enough chocolate in a pain au chocolat. I think people try to get around that by putting 2 chocolate batons in there. I worked at a place here where we made our own chocolate batons that were very thick, but I just don't think that that's what I want. I want chocolate in every bite. I don't want it to be overly sweet. So that's why I developed this.
Love. So on day 1, we're going to make our biga, which takes about 5 minutes, and then we're going to ferment that, which takes about 12 to 14 hours. Basically, this is day 1, but it's 2 days before you want to actually eat croissant. So we're going to make the biga by mixing together. And what tool are you using to mix this?
I would use like a wooden spoon, or you could even use your hand if you want to really get in there.
So we're going to mix together some bread flour as opposed to all-purpose. Yep. Can you tell us what brand you love of bread flour?
King Arthur is what I used in the book.
Yep. We're going to mix together some bread flour, some water. Is it room temperature? Is it warm? Does it matter?
Room temp is best. You don't want it too warm because then the yeast will start to get really active really fast, and you want this to be like a low and slow type of thing.
So we're going to add some room temp water and a very small pinch of yeast. You call for active dry yeast. Why are you not an instant yeast person?
The dry active is going to take longer to activate, and for like something that has long fermentations, you want that delay so that it's not just overactive.
So we're going to mix that together until it's homogeneous. Then we're going to let the biga ferment in a covered, lightly oiled bowl at room temp for about 12 to 14 hours. 2 questions. Do you have a preferred oil that you're oiling your bowl with?
No, like just something neutral in taste. You don't want to have too much on there. It's really just to keep it from sticking.
Do you have a favorite bowl? Or is it just like a metal restaurant supply bowl? Is that what you're using?
Yeah,
yep.
Metal bowls, yep.
Then on day 2, so the next morning, let's say, we're going to make our butter block, which will take us 20 minutes. We're going to make our dough, which will take us 20. I love this so much that we have so much information. That's why I'm telling everyone. We make our dough, which is going to take us 25 minutes. Then we're going to ferment the dough, which is 12 to 16 hours. And while we're fermenting, we're going to make our chocolate whipped ganache, which is like 20 minutes. So first things first, we're going to make our butter block. So we're going to cut room temp unsalted butter. I know you love the high-fat butter. Can you tell us why the high-fat butter is so good for lamination?
Yes, it's really essential for lamination. That extra fat is going to make it more pliable when it's colder. It doesn't seem like a big difference. Like American style butter is 80%, European is 82%. That 2% makes so much of a difference in the flexibility.
The flexibility of the butter in its block form is super important when you are wrapping the dough around it.
Yes.
So we're going to cut this butter into roughly 1-inch cubes. We're going to dust with flour. Then we're going to be placing the cubes close together on a piece of parchment paper. I could be wrong, but I feel like this technique for making a butter block is slightly unusual, the cubes of butter. And I wondered if I'm wrong and that everybody you know does cubes. I feel like I've seen it with slabs of butter, like almost taking the pound of butter and slicing. Talk to me about your cube choice, or was that just the way you were trained and that's just the way you do it?
I mean, we did really weird things with making butter blocks. This is kind of my own thing. I think it's better to start with more pieces that you're really smashing together as opposed to like 2 slabs that you're trying to push together, because this is going to get it to be more one solid piece rather than 2 pieces pushed together. And that's going to lessen the risk of it kind of just breaking apart from each other when you're laminating.
I think it's genius. Yeah, I was pretty sure I hadn't heard it before, but then I was like, maybe I live under a rock and everybody's making butter blocks with cubed butter. But we're going to place those cubes close together on a piece of parchment paper, cover with a piece of plastic wrap, and we're going to use our hands and then a rolling pin to sort of aggressively smash the butter cubes, smash or smush, technical term, smush, those butter cubes together. Tell us what kind of rolling pin you like best.
Oh, the non-tapered. It's just like a dowel. I hate rolling pins with the handles that spin. Oh, that's the worst kind.
Yep.
And then the French kind is also just like, why are we making things more difficult on ourselves with the taper?
So we're going to start rolling the butter out flat, and we want a 10 by 7 inch rectangle. We're going to use a metal bench scraper to square off our corners. We want the entire thing to be really flat, really even thickness. Can you tell us why flat and even is so important?
Yes, it's more important to have it flat than it is to get the exact dimensions I list in the book, because when you're thinking about laminating, you're creating layers that stack on top of each other. And the way those layers sit together is going to inform the dough, how it's going to rise in the oven, because the hollow parts of a croissant crumb are the butter melting and steam escaping. So the way to get a perfect honeycomb structure is to make your dough butter layers exactly the same width all the way across. If you have big lumps, you're going to have like a big hole in the center of your croissant. and it's not going to rise evenly. So that's why it's so important to get the thickness right.
To ensure we get that thickness, we can lift the plastic wrap off of the butter. We can rearrange with our hands as necessary in order to achieve that even thickness. Then we'll refrigerate the butter block overnight until cold and flexible, and then we're going to laminate it with it. Next, we're making this the same day. We're going to make the croissant dough. So we're going to place some cold water, some whole milk, some flour, which is the King Arthur bread flour again, some sugar. I think it's granulated, correct? I think I read in the beginning of the book that if you say sugar, you mean granulated. Some cocoa powder. It's described as brute cocoa powder. Is that different than Dutch processed?
I don't think it's like natural, but it's just like a darker version of Dutch. So it has like a deeper flavor. So if you can find brute, that is the best one, I think, to use. But if you can't find it, I think Dutch is the way to go.
Would you use like a black cocoa powder, or that would be too...
I think you could.
Yeah.
I think it'll make it very dark, but I think the acidity won't matter. So that should work.
So we're going to add the cocoa powder, the flour, the milk, the cold water, the granulated sugar, some of that same European-style cold butter, fine sea salt. Do you ever use kosher or no?
I mean, you can, but it'll be a little saltier. So I like the more mellow nature of the sea salt.
Yep. Add some dry active yeast. We'll put all that in the stand mixer fitted with the hook attachment. We'll add our biga, which has rested overnight. We'll add some dark melted chocolate. Brand of chocolate that you like in this recipe or that you guys use in the bakery?
We use Valrhona pretty exclusively. I love their chocolate. But any high quality chocolate's going to work, like Ghirardelli, Cocoa Berry, something like that.
We'll start the mixer, and we should do so right away because we don't want that chocolate to solidify. And we'll mix on low speed for 25 minutes. So when you say low in an at-home stand mixer, are we talking like literally the lowest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want low and slow here. You do say if the dough climbs the hook, stop the mixer, scrape it down, turn it on again. And when we're done, what will the dough look like?
The dough will be a dark chocolate color, and it's not going to be entirely smooth, or it shouldn't be. You want to leave a little room for gluten development during lamination, and if you get it like so super smooth and tight during the mix, it's going to be really hard to roll out. So I like to go kind of medium gluten development, craggly in some spots, but it should not feel sticky or anything. It's a very stiff dough.
So then we're going to roll this moderately developed dough into an egg shape. I thought the egg shape was so interesting too. Is that a Christina thing?
No, that I learned from somewhere I worked, and that's just how I do it. Yeah.
Talk to me about how do we get our egg shape? Are we using our hands?
Yeah. So I kind of like knead a few times and then rotate and then knead it and then rotate it and knead it. So I do it 3 times, and that kind of just automatically makes an egg shape. The shape is not super important. It's more about you want to get like a nice smooth surface on the top and have no rough part of the dough showing, because for proper fermentation to happen, you really want to have it in an enclosed dough. Like you don't want just the craggly part exposed. So that's really what it's for.
So then we'll place our egg on a parchment lined baking sheet. We'll wrap the whole sheet with plastic wrap. We'll put it in the refrigerator, ferment for at least 12 hours, up to 16. What will it look like once it's properly fermented?
It will have grown a little bit. I don't think there's any way to avoid that, but you don't want it to be busting out of the plastic wrap. But it probably will grow by like 50%.
And while it is fermenting, we're going to make our chocolate whipped ganache. So we're going to bloom some sheet gelatin in some ice water. I, exclusively use sheet gelatin like when I worked in a bakery, but tell us why sheet gelatin is so good.
I like working with it just, I think, from familiarity. I never really have worked with powdered gelatin, and conversion has always confused me. So I just stick with sheet. I think it's nicer.
I think it's so much easier. I wish that you found sheet in the grocery store the way you can find the powdered stuff. Because I agree. I find it so much easier. And then we're going to bloom the gelatin in the water. That'll be about 3 to 5 minutes. What are we looking for when it's properly bloomed?
We just want it to be super pliable. You can squish it in your hand.
So now we're going to heat some cream in a small saucepan over medium-high heat. And once the gelatin's bloomed, we'll squeeze out the excess water, put it in a heat-proof bowl with some high-quality milk chocolate. when the cream comes to a boil, we'll pour that over the chocolate and gelatin mixture. Why do you like to have gelatin in this ganache? Is it just for the stability of the croissant on the shelf?
I love putting gelatin in ganache, A, for stability, but B, because you are able to whip it without it breaking. It really holds on to that water, and you can just whip the heck out of it, and it will not turn into butter.
So then we're going to gently stir to melt that chocolate completely. We'll use an immersion blender to mix until it's homogeneous. We'll be scraping the bottoms and sides of our bowl. And then with the immersion blender running, we're going to stream in the remaining cream. So we've only added some of the cream. Why are you adding the cream in 2 parts?
To create the ganache emulsion, using less of the cream is better. And then adding cold cream is going to keep the temp low. So it's like less of a chance of anything splitting. I think that's why.
Great reason. So now we're going to transfer it to a container, place plastic wrap directly on top to prevent any sweating. I don't think this is the case because this is more of a pudding phenomenon, but we're not worried about a skin forming on the ganache. We're just worried about moisture and sweating.
Like when we store it at the bakery, we always put plastic over anything that's above room temp, just because when you put it in the fridge, it's going to start condensing, and then that water droplet drips back down from the lid, and then you got water in your ganache, and that's not good.
Not good. And now we'll refrigerate that overnight. Now it's day 3. We have a few different things we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to lock in the butter and laminate the dough. That's going to take us about 2 hours, and we'll include our letter fold and our book fold, which are part of our lamination process. Then we're going to shape the dough into our croissant shape. That'll be about 30 minutes. Then we're going to proof the dough. That's 2 to 3 hours. And then we'll bake the croissant, which is 27 to 30 minutes. And finally, we'll fill the croissant. I mean, I love this specificity. So good. Then we're going to fill the croissant, which is going to take us 5 minutes. Love. So first things first, we're going to lock in the butter and begin the lamination. As we're doing this, and we've already kind of talked about the importance of the even layers, we're going to focus on creating even layers, as in just as thick layers of the dough, butter, dough. When you lock in the butter and roll it out, you'll have the best results if those 3 layers end up being the same. Depending on your temperature of your kitchen, one might pull the butter block out of the fridge 30 minutes before you want to laminate, 60 minutes. I assume at the bakery things are warm, so you probably are more the 30 minutes.
We actually cheat at the bakery, and we use specific butter that is 84% and it's already sheeted. So it's flexible. Brilliant. Straight out of the fridge.
Yep. Can you tell us sort of what the ideal butter block kind of vibe, look, feel is?
Yeah, you should be able to pick it up and not have your fingers sink into it. If your fingers do sink in or they start to feel greasy from holding it, it's too warm. And you want to be able to kind of bend it, and it should flex with that bend. If it breaks at all, it's too cold. If you're able to pick it up without sinking in, and you can move it around and kind of wiggle it and flex it, that is going to be the perfect consistency.
So now we're going to transfer our croissant dough to a lightly floured surface. We'll orient our egg so the shorter side of the egg is towards us. And we're going to degas the dough. Can you tell us your degassing technique?
Yeah, so I like to start, I will put the dough so that nice side is on the counter and the seam is kind of facing up, because you always want the best version of the dough to be on the outside of your folds. And I take a rolling pin, my non-tapered rolling pin, and I will start I'll start in the middle of it and just press down really hard. You'll hear all the air escape, and then move forward with it just a little bit and do the same thing. And then just keep moving farther and farther up the egg away from yourself. Keep pressing down each time. And then go back to the center and do the same thing going towards you until there's no air left in it.
So we'll roll till we've created like a flat rectangle with no air bubbles. And we'll roll the dough into a 21 by 7 inch rectangle with an even thickness. We're focusing really just on that even thickness, correct?
Yes, the even thickness and trying to get the edges as square as possible without getting them too thin. I think rolling out at home, there tends to be a bias towards getting the edges really thin and the middle is really thick. So just working from the middle to the outside instead of just working on the outside. Like anytime you touch your rolling pin to the dough, just start at the middle. That way you're really getting the middle as thin as the edges.
So now we're going to rotate the dough so the long side is towards us, and we're going to visually kind of vertically divide the dough into 4 pieces. And then we're going to place that butter block in the middle 2 sections. The visual part is scary for me because I worry that I would get it wrong. Do you ever recommend that someone grab a little tape measure or ruler, or do you feel like at this point eyeballing is all you really need?
If you're very worried, you can get a measuring tape.
That's
I'm not
me.
going to discourage that. Yeah. But at this point, it doesn't really matter because you're really just looking to get the butter generally in the center and being able to like take the flaps on the outside and put them over. It doesn't matter if they end up directly in the center of that butter, just so long as they're coming together and everything is even is really the most important part.
So we're going to fold the left flap over the top of the butter, and it should land at the center line of the butter. And we want to make sure that the dough is really hugging the butter quite tightly at the point where it's folding over the butter. Explain this hugging tightly idea.
Yeah, so if you were to leave a gap between that fold and the butter, when you go to roll it out, that whole section where the butter is not hugging is going to turn into just one big thick piece of dough. And then that's just going to be dough. That's not going to be tasty.
Yep. So we're going to repeat with the right flap of dough. So now the 2 dough flaps will meet each other in the center of the butter, otherwise known as locking in the butter. And right now we're looking just for that even thickness that we've discussed, the even layer of butter. You know, if you looked at this butter block from the side, you should be able to see dough, butter, dough, all the same thickness.
Yes.
And you say that it's a good idea to be fastidious at this stage about making the layers perfectly even and symmetrical. Why does that help us later?
Yeah, so this is the stage where any mistake you make or any unevenness you have it's just going to expound later on and get worse. So like there's no hiding the mistake now. This is the part where, yeah, it's going to just get worse as you go on.
Yep. But you also say to be careful about fussing too much. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a fine line. The dough temperature is so important. So if you're like really fidgeting a lot and over handling it, the warmth from your hands and like just from the environment are going to start warming everything up. It's going to make it harder to work with. So at a certain point, you have to just be like, I have done my best. It is time to move on.
So now we're going to make our letter fold. So with the seam of the dough going perpendicular or vertical to us, we're going to start rolling the dough to lengthen it. Now we only roll up and down, away, and then towards us, not sideways or diagonally. Can you tell us why?
This is going to mimic the act of a sheeter the best way at home. We don't want to be widening it. That's just not going to get us to where we want to be shape-wise. And rolling just away and back is going to get us a more even rollout. So if you're going sideways and like switching it all around, it's really easy to get confused as to how you're going to fold things up. So yeah, this is just basically you're mimicking what a sheeter does.
So we're going to roll the dough till it's about 1/3 of an inch thick, about a 25 by 11 inch rectangle, but we don't have to be so obsessed with your measurements because it's all going to be a little different. The most important thing would be the thickness and the evenness of that thickness, correct?
Yeah, especially as we start trimming and we start doing the folds. Everyone's dimensions are going to be different based on how much they cut off during the trimming. So the thickness is really what matters.
If the top or the bottom of the rectangle is not perfectly straight, we can use a paring knife to trim the edges so we end up with a rectangle shape. But we don't want to trim those long sides. Again, we're just focusing on the 2 ends. Remind us, why shouldn't we trim the sides?
Well, partly because we'll trim that in the next turn because that's going to become the short side in our next turn.
Right.
So it really doesn't serve a purpose to do now. And then that's going to help keep the butter kind of situated in the side of the dough. That's our safety net. Whereas like we're cutting already 2 ends that are open-ended already.
So now we're going to rotate the dough 90 degrees so the long side is towards us, and we'll perform a letter fold, Visually, this time we're dividing into thirds, and we're going to fold that left third over to cover the middle third. We'll make sure the edges of the dough are lined up with each other. Then we'll fold the right third over the middle third to finish. Place on a baking sheet, wrapped in plastic, refrigerate 30 minutes. Do some croissant recipes have more than one letter fold? Is there anything unique about the fact that you're just having us do one letter and one book?
Yeah, I think there's many ways that people laminate dough, and it all depends on the structure you're looking for. So the type of fold and the amount of folds you do are all going to change how thick and how many layers your final dough has. I have found that the single double letter book combo gives a really nice open crumb without being too fussy. Learning both folds, I think, is important for home bakers to feel out both of them. But at the bakery here, we do 3 single folds just because that's better for like the type of croissant we're making here. But you can experiment with the kind of folds you want to do. You could do 2 doubles, you could do 3 singles, you could do a double, then a single. Once you get the feel for the lamination process, that's kind of like up to you. It's your personal preference.
And when you say double and single, are you differentiating between letter and book, or you're differentiating?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And
Yes.
letter is
single.
and book is double.
Yeah.
Now we're going to make a book fold, a double. We're going to place the chilled dough on a lightly floured surface, orienting the spine of the dough block on our left, and it's just chilled, right? Then we're going to roll this out to 1/3 inch thickness. Again, we're only lengthening. We'll end up with a 30 by 8.5 inch rectangle, but don't be super attached to those numbers. We'll trim our short ends, which are the ends you and I just talked about that we didn't trim the last time, if necessary, to make a nice rectangle. We'll rotate the dough so the long side is towards us. The spine is now away from us. And now we're visually dividing the dough into fourths. We're folding both outer fourths to the middle where they meet and fold the right half over the left half until our book fold is complete. And I just want to tell the listeners that in Christina's book, you can see pictures of all of this. It's much easier to see a picture than it is to describe it. Although
yes.
I think that you and I are doing a great job of describing it, just saying.
Absolutely.
Now we're done laminating. We're going to wrap it up in plastic, let it chill in the fridge for at least an hour before rolling it out and shaping it. When we do that, we're going to roll the laminated dough, again, out to 16 by 19 inch rectangle, about 1/4 inch thick. So this is slightly thinner than we've been doing. And we're going to be cutting 7 by 3 inch rectangles out of the dough. I thought this was interesting. This dough, thank goodness, happens to have mini chocolate chips in it. And is that the reason that you decided, because the way we're going to roll these is kind of simpler than a classic croissant that's a tiny, skinny, long triangle, and that can get a little funky. Was the reasoning behind the shape of these for variety in the pastry case because of those mini chocolate chips? What inspired this, as you call it, almost like you're rolling up a cinnamon roll?
Yeah, this is a classic pan au chocolat shape. We are making a chocolate croissant, and I feel like it should kind of look like one. So that's part of it. But then also using the chocolate chips, if you were to have a tapered croissant shape, those would just kind of fall out everywhere. So the square shape is going to enfold them in the dough and keep them from just going everywhere.
So we're going to trim the bottom edge of our dough using a ruler as a guide to keep it straight. From that cut that we just made, which is the bottom of our dough that's closest to us, we are going to measure 7 inches up. And we're going to do that towards one end of that long rectangle and then also a few inches away. Just the idea being we're making 2 cuts so that we can use the ruler to make one long cut. Correct?
Yes.
But basically, peeps, the bottom of the dough is very straight. We've just trimmed it, and we just go 7 inches up from the bottom. 2 or even 3 times, if that makes you feel better, just so that we have a couple of little marks where we can put our ruler under those marks and make a cut across. And then we'll do that again 7 inches up from there, so that would be 14 inches from the bottom, which is going to give us 2 7-inch wide strips of dough. Then we'll do the same thing crosswise, starting at the right side of the strips, trimming our edges off. Now from that edge, we'll do every 3 inches, cutting crosswise at all the 3-inch marks. So you should now have, once you make your 2 7s and your 3-inch cut all the way across, you're going to end up with 12 7 by 3 inch rectangles. We're going to egg wash right now I know that you say egg wash is for shine. Is it also right now so that the chips will stick to the dough?
Yeah. It's more just an adhesion.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have some great egg wash tips. You know, we're going to apply with a pastry brush. We're really going to avoid pooling on the baking sheet. Aim is like a very thin layer, evenly covering the exposed pastry. Well, first of all, what tool are we using to combine the yolk and the cream?
You could either whisk it, or I like to just immersion blend it. Get rid of any
of those white
lumps
string
that could be in there.
Yep. So we'll make the egg wash. We'll mix with an immersion blender, 1 egg yolk, and 2 tablespoons of either heavy cream or milk. What do you prefer? In the bakery, are you guys using milk or heavy cream?
We use a mixture of milk and heavy cream. I like the richness that the heavy cream brings to the color, but I mean, it also can get really thick, so I like to cut it with milk a little bit, make it more spreadable.
So we'll brush that on our rectangles. We're going to sprinkle some mini chocolate chips over the rectangles, and then we'll roll up the pastries, starting with the short ends and rolling up like a cinnamon roll. Tell us what to do if some of our little chocolate chips escape.
I just kind of gather them off the table and throw them on a different croissant that I'm about to roll up. And, you might end up with a few strays when you're done, but that's fine.
So we end up with a cylinder shape. The seam of that cylinder should be on the bottom. Is that so it doesn't unravel?
Yes. Yeah. If you're proofing it and that's able to pop up, it will.
Yep.
So you got to trap it.
So we're going to repeat with all of our rectangles, and then we'll put 6 on one parchment lined baking sheet and 6 on the other. We're going to proof the croissant. So we want to preserve all those layers from the lamination, which means that the proofing temp cannot exceed 82 degrees, nor can it exceed 2.5 to 3 hours. Why is it problematic if it gets too hot? You have the best hack for where we should be proofing. So tell us both those things. Why we don't want it to be any hotter than that, and where we're going to proof if we don't have a proofing cabinet.
Yeah. So you don't want it to be above 82 degrees, because after that point, the butter starts to get really soft and even melt. And you don't want it to melt into your dough, because then it's not going to have the steam and evaporation that it needs in the oven. That is what kind of helps give it its lift in the oven and the hollow spaces. So if you're proofing at a high temperature and your butter is melting out, it's just going to leak out of your pastry when you put it in the oven, because it's already half melted. So that's why the 82 degrees is important. You can certainly proof at a lower temp. It will just take a lot longer. So 82 is like the sweet spot. When I was developing these recipes for a home kitchen, I was like, how am I going to proof these? I was writing it in February and my house is cold. And I'm like, what am I going to do to proof these at home? And I came up with an idea of putting them in my dishwasher, because really all a proofing cabinet is something that retains temperature and humidity. And I had read about people doing it in their ovens with the pilot light, just doing it overnight, like covered on a rack. But I was like, this is the ideal environment in the dishwasher that steam can't escape. So, I made a little tester. I cleaned out the dishwasher, made sure it was empty, and I put the pastries in the top rack, and then I put boiling water in a bowl at the bottom. So that created steam for humidity, and it kept the temperature right at about 82 degrees. And I was like, wow, I'm really onto something here.
I love it. I love it. So that's our dishwasher hack, our proofing cabinet dishwasher hack. We will proof until the croissant almost triples in size. It'll jiggle like Jell-O when the baking sheet is shaken. You'll be able to see all the different layers separating from each other. Now we're going to preheat our oven, not our dishwasher, to 350 degrees. We'll egg wash our croissant, and we'll bake in the center of the oven for 27 to 30 minutes and let cool completely. Once the croissants are cool, we're going to transfer our ganache to a stand mixer fitted with the whisk attachment and whisk on medium-high speed until stiff peaks form. Transfer the ganache to a piping bag. Tell us about how we sort of make our hole on the bottom of our croissant.
Once they're cool, you're going to kind of upend it, take a paring knife, and stick it right into the bottom of the croissant. This is going to hide the hole from anyone seeing it, and they'll be like, wow, how'd you get the mousse in there? So you stick your paring knife in, and you have to go pretty deep to get through all the different layers. So probably about halfway up, and then twist it to create kind of like a circular hole. It's easier if you have a thinner paring knife like we have in food service. The really thick ones for home might be creating too big of a hole. So a really kind of narrow knife. And then stick your piping bag into that hole, and you have to go like a good 1 to 2 inches in and really squeeze it in. And it's difficult to fill a croissant just by feel. So I like to weigh the croissant before I add anything and weigh it after. That way I know if I'm actually getting it in there, because so many times I have thought that there is filling in there and there's not.
Yeah, I thought that was a great tip. And then we're going to serve these cuties up.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Christina. And I just want to say that you are my cherry pie.
Thank you.
That's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow She's My Cherry Pie on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And tell your pals about us. You can find today's recipe at cherrybomb.substack.com. She's My Cherry Pie is a production of the Cherry Bomb Podcast Network. Our producers are Carrie Diamond, Catherine Baker, and Jenna Sadu. Thank you so much for listening to She's My Cherry Pie, and happy baking!